Hello and welcome to this Affinity photo tutorial, which is the first of two tutorials that I'm going to make, basically on the same subject and pretty much using a lot of the same features, but hopefully with different end results. Now this is a adaptation of a Photoshop tutorial which is done by PSDDude, and yeah, it's a very good tutorial, and you can do pretty much everything in Affinity Photo as you can in this tutorial. I will add a link to this so you can check it out, and also if you want to use the same images, there are links to them here. Now a lot of them, pretty much all of them, are free. I can't remember which one it is. It's possibly one of the grunge textures, but definitely the Steven Gerrard picture you have to pay for or be a member of whatever page it downloads from, which is why I'm going to use a picture that I got off Pixabay.com for the football lady footballer. But it doesn't have to be for football, it can be like for American football, tennis, whatever. You just need to change the stadium picture and adapt it to your needs. So some of the settings that you have in this tutorial may not work as well with the pictures that you're going to use, so you will have to sort of adapt the blend modes or the colors to get the sort of result that you are after, which is partly what the second tutorial will be about, because I'll be using different images. Looking at these links here that open up the resources that you can use to make this picture, a couple of them that are really good in my opinion is, first of all, the lens flare collection. If I click on that, it opens up this collection from DeviantArt. Now you do have to be a bit quick here because this advert goes right over the top. Yes, I'll say you do have to be quick. It goes over the top of the download button. So if you're going to download it, you've got to be quick before that advert pops up. But it has all these lens flares. There's about 148 lens flares. So that's quite a good collection to get, you know, whether you use it for this project or any other project. Can't remember whichever one it was. The coloured lines one, for example, you can just right click on that and go to save picture as, so that's not a problem. And you will see most of these come from the DeviantArt site. So let's start the tutorial properly. Now it says to create a new file, dimensions 1920 by 1080. So let me do that first of all. This is the end result that I ended up with using this tutorial, and this is the result I ended up with using different images and adapting it slightly differently. So this is the one that we're going to be aiming for in this tutorial. Let me close that. So we're going to start a new file, and let me just remind myself what the size was. 1920 by 1080. Right. And then click OK. Okay, so following on to the next step in the tutorial, and that is to open a rain image that they added a link to. Now I believe that was one of the ones that you had to pay for, so I got this particular image of some raindrops from Pixabay.com, and I would add a link to this and to any other files not already linked in that tutorial in the description for this video. So let me just copy this and paste it on my document, come to the move tool, and I will just resize this a bit. Let me just, till I'm sort of happy with what I'm getting. I think that will do. And then they said to change the blend mode to overlay and reduce that down to 50%, although I think I might come to about 60%, so it still stays a bit stronger like that. So next thing they said is to open up the stadium picture and the white lines, abstract lines I mean, and transform them and change the blend mode to multiply. So let me do that. Let's open up the abstract paper first. Copy this. Edit. Paste. And size wise that's okay as it is, so I'll change the blend mode to multiply, just there, so you can see some of those raindrops coming through. And the other picture was the stadium, so we'll get that one and copy that, and then edit and paste this in. So we'll have to resize this. I will hold down the control key when I do this so it stays in proportion. Let's go about there. Change the blend mode to multiply. You can see the black line coming down here, so what I might do here is to actually make this much bigger so it fills up the whole of that particular image, which is why I personally would have gone with starting with a size of the stadium, but I will leave it like that. So the next thing they say to do, and this is where they get the Steven Gerrard image, and like I said, I'm going to use this picture of the female football player because I can get it free from Pixabay.com, and then it's just a question of making a selection, and I'm going to use the selection brush here just for quickness, but if you prefer to do a better cutout of your particular image, you may want to use a different selection tool. I'm just doing this for speed. Right, that's that bit there. Right, so this is the most time consuming bit here. Reduce the brush size. Right, got a little bit of grass here I don't want, so I'll come to subtract and just get rid of that bit. Come back to add, just get the end of that finger there. Alright, I think that's got to be good enough for this tutorial here. Obviously I'd like to do a better selection if I could, but it's already taken up quite a lot of time. Just double check I haven't missed anything major. Alright, that's going to be good enough for that. So let me just zoom out again, and I'll just come to the refine button, and I'm just going to feather this by 0.5 of a pixel. Click apply, and then I'm just going to press Ctrl and J to duplicate that selection onto a different layer. I can then press Ctrl and D to get rid of the selection, and then I'm just going to copy this layer. So I right click and copy. I'll come back to my image here and then edit and paste. So again, I'm just going to resize this. Alright. And that'll do for that for the moment. Let me shut down some of these images I don't need it anymore. So moving on, we have the footballer now, and what they then did was they flipped the image of Steven Gerrard and set the blend mode to lighten. So let me come back to that. So I'm going to come to, so that is a layer that is highlighted, so it's arrange, flip horizontally, and then I'll just move to this side of the image and change the blend mode to lighten, which just makes her a bit sort of see-through in certain places on this image. So I'm going to sort of move her knee away from that yellow stripe because I was losing too much of it there, but I think that will do. That's not bad. So moving on to the next step, and this is where you get the grungy paper texture, soft light at 10%. So paper texture, copy, and then paste that in. Size wise, it looks like it's going to be, it's very, let me zoom out a bit, I can see all of it. Right, let me rotate that round, and then just reduce it in size. Press Ctrl and 0 to come back out, and then I'm going to change the blend mode to soft light. And the opacity, I think it was 10%, which I found to be, I mean, going down to 10%, you might just well not have it. I can't even see it. I mean, so I'm going to bring this up to 50%, just to, so you may not be able to even see this on the video, but I can only just about see that on my screen. So I will leave that there. The next step is a grunge texture and blend mode of overlay, and this is this one. So copy that and edit, paste. Again, I'm going to zoom out to see how big this is. Quite big. So again, hold down the Control key and just make it so it's filling the whole image. Control 0 to come back out and change that to, I think it was overlay. Let me just double check that. Yeah, overlay. Again, I personally, I can only just about see bits of it, but I will leave that as that is. So the next thing was a dust texture set to lighten, an opacity of 70%. So the dust texture is this one. So I'll copy this and then paste that in. Again, it's change the size. Again, so lighten and 70%, but 70% is still a bit overpowering for my personal taste, so I'm going to come down to, let's say, 50%. And then to this I'm going to add a mask. I'm clicking on this icon here, and then I'm going to come to the paintbrush tool, have black, and it is the mask layer that we are painting on. And let me reduce the size of this. I'm just going to paint over certain areas that I don't want to be affected by that dust layer. Just so let me just reduce the opacity on this a bit, down to 50%, and I'll just take some of it away from this corner. There you go. Alright, that would do for that. And let's move on. Now that we have a snow texture here with a blend mode of lighten colour at 30%. Now the snow texture is in, there's 4 different options, 6 different options, sorry, in the download that you can get from the links in the tutorial. I'm going to go with number 3. So copy that and paste that. Again, I'm going to come out. Oh, that pretty much fits it okay. So, and I've forgotten what the blend mode is supposed to be. Lighten colour at 30%. So lighter colour at 30%. Now again here, if you have any sort of particles that are on an area you don't want, you can add a layer mask and just use the paintbrush on black and just try to remove some of those particles that you may not want in certain areas, but it's really just over this lady's face. So I will leave that as it is. The next step is a lens flare. Now again, you got all these lens flares that you can download. As you can see, there's loads of them here, so I'm just going to pick one at random. Let's try number 46. Now we have this lens flare here, so I'm going to right click this. Let me shut some of these others down. And come back to our image here and then edit and paste and come to the move tool, and I'm going to reduce its size and I'm going to rotate it, and then it's a case of where should I put it about there, and then I'm going to change the blend mode to screen, and with the screen you will lose a lot of that black edge that's around there, so it looks like there's a sort of a floodlight or something happening up here in the corner of the stadium that's giving us this lens flare. Just come off that, but you can see in a lot of these the straight line from where that image is. So this again is where you can add a layer mask. Come on. Oh, it helps if I have the layer highlighted. Add the layer mask. Come to the brush tool. Fairly low opacity. Let's reduce the hardness right down. Increase the brush size. And then just paint any of these straight lines from that image that might be visible away. Without losing any of the lens flare. There we go. That's okay. So the next step is even more particles. I'm not going to bother with this particular part because I've got enough particles on my particular image as far as I'm concerned, but again you could add more particles. Now this is where we start adding some adjustments. So we got the adjustment layer with the gradient map, and we want black one end and white the other end, soft light 45%. So make sure that it's the top layer that is highlighted, adjustment, and then gradient map. Let me get rid of this middle one, don't want that, just click and drag it out of the way. So I'm going to click on the left hand side and I'm going to change this to black down there, click on the other end and change that to white, and let me just double check on that again. What was it? Soft light 45%. So you can change the blend mode from here. So we go soft light and the opacity was 45%. That's close enough. Alright, so close that. So next one is a photo filter, which is sepia and a density of 50%. So we got lens filter, and we now want to look for a sepia color, which is sort of somewhere down there. Looks sepia to me, which is, if you're going to go with hex sliders, it is 57 3C00 if you want to use the hex numbers. This is the color I've done. I've just done it at random, and the density is already set at 50%, so I'll leave that one like that. And the next one is a curves layer. Now this is going to be a bit hard to replicate because they've got like input of 89, output of 73, but on the curves adjustment here you don't really have a place to sort of, I don't mean it works the same way. 89 and 73. Yes, it doesn't have any effect. Let me just delete that and bring it back. Curves. So really it's just a case here of altering this to your personal tastes. I'll bring the top down a bit to make the blacks blacker and just bring up the bottom half of the line to make the lighter areas a bit more lighter. So just giving me this sort of gentle S shape, and I'll leave that like that. And then you've got brightness and contrast, brightness at -10. So again, up here, brightness, contrast, and -10, -11, that's close enough. And then they got do an adjustment layer of color lookup and use futuristic bleak, which is something you can't do in Affinity Photo, but they do have a workaround for it down here, which is to add another gradient map. And this time, let me just copy these numbers. So we're using these colors here, so let me just add another gradient map. Get rid of that middle one. And then paste in that number for that end. And then this number here for the other end. And let me just check the blending mode, set blend mode to overlay. So overlay. Like that. And then they have another photo filter with this hex code for the color. So let's come back to here and lens filter and paste that color in. Just make sure there's no blend modes. Density of 50% is all the only option they've got you there, and it's already on 50%. So I think that's the last step as far as that's concerned. Oh, then it's just a case of merging in all the layers and doing the high pass filter. So let me just right click the top layer and do merge visible, and then have the filters, sharpen, high pass, and it's easier to just type this in, 2 pixels, and then click apply and change the blend mode of this to overlay. And that, I believe, is the end of this part of the tutorial. You could then save this under a new name. You could then go on, like they have here, to add your own words or whatever you for whichever poster you're making. They do have a link to this scoreboard PSD, but again, that's one you have to pay for. But you could just add your own text, whatever it might be. Let me just center that, and I'm going to use a style here just quickly. Let's use this. There you go. And then I'm just going to duplicate the layer a couple of times. Just bring that up. Yeah, no, and that's quite good there, because that D has now sort of landed where the lens flare is. Makes it look like it's sort of sparkling off of that particular image. So whatever wording or logos or whatever you want to put into the other side of the poster is up to you, but you can save that image under new name, and that is the end of this tutorial. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.